Welcome back to this bonus episode of That So Second Millennium. This is the Bill and I, and for that matter Matthew Cloud, are all up to our eyeballs in teaching this semester is basically what it is. So I wanted to make sure to reach back and get to this bonus episode from the content before we formally started the interview with Matthew Cloud. For the rest of this year, I hope that we get one episode out a month. That's probably all that we can manage for the rest of 2021. I know that my schedule opens up a lot in January. There are interesting people to interview here. I believe Bill has some leads that he's trying to track down. So hopefully we'll have a lot more content for you. But for the rest of the year, we are going to be kind of in critical mode. So I did want to reach back and get this 10 minutes of good content before we even got the interview started. So here to round out October is a little bit more of Bill and I discussing cybersecurity, the philosophy of computer science with Matthew Cloud.
You helped run one of the three pilot grants funded by the National Center for Academic Excellence in Cybersecurity. And
Right.
is that, are you based at Notre Dame for that, or?
So that's actually based through Ivy Tech Community College. That's a
Okay,
part-time role
great.
that I maintain
Okay.
through them. And that's a partnership with Ivy Tech Community College, Purdue Northwest, the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, and the University of North Carolina, Charlotte.
Wow.
And then my role in there is helping to develop. We have three different tracks: forensics, cloud system admin, and AI IoT security. So I really work on the AI IoT security track for the most part, but help in the others. We have faculty, these great faculty from other colleges that are developing out the other courses and tracks to meet the needs of industry with those 500,000 open jobs right now. That's doubled from last year. If you go to cyberseek.org, you can check that out for yourself and see how many jobs are really out there and how that's changing
amazing.
what's
Yeah.
available in your state. But that's one of those jobs you could live anywhere. So if you want to live in Wyoming or you want to live in South Bend, Indiana, you can do that and work for anybody in the U.S. Right? And so that particular pilot grant is to really build that out and meet that need. We're doing about 550 people a year for the next 2 years. But we're looking at how do we make that expand to other universities, including like Holy Cross College, because I need a place for them to transfer to.
Right.
In AI and IoT, I was looking for other colleges to help me build out the AI, and I kept getting these offers like, hey, why don't you come work for us? So
Very good.
I was like, they weren't necessarily looking for AI at Holy Cross College, but they were right across the street from me. And I love the philosophy here. So I happened to teach a class in spring just by chance. I needed somebody to teach an introductory computer applications course. And I thought this is just a wonderful place to be.
Wow. Yeah. Boy, we have to ask you about what is the connection between philosophy and computer science, and
Well, Dr. David Lutz, who was dean at the time,
yes,
he had just published a paper a couple of years ago, actually, on Ubuntu and Ubuntu philosophy.
Oh, right.
Ubuntu in my world in computer science, we call it Ubuntu.
Right.
But it's the Ubuntu operating system, a Linux operating system.
Yes, my desktop that's in storage at my dad's house. Yes, still has whatever I'll need to update it to by the time I get it back. But yes.
Well, in cybersecurity, Ubuntu is a very popular version of Linux operating system. There's another version called Kali, very specific about how do you prepare and defend against different attacks, but and even do some forensics. But
is it like
Ubuntu
African martial arts or something?
No. I'm not really sure where the word Kali comes from. I'll have to look that one up. But Ubuntu, I never really thought about that one either. And Dave and I were talking about it, and I realized that I just read his paper actually about Ubuntu philosophy, and he had written one about using technical skills in a liberal arts education. And totally unrelated. I had no idea he was at this college. It just was providence from God is what I would say. Right.
Yeah.
And here I am talking to him the next week. Like, that's okay. That's not coincidence. So,
right.
Because the sources where I got into that had nothing to do with anything with Catholicism. It was just trying to look up some different ideas to explain what was going on and getting deeper into philosophy. And some of the challenges of how do we transition students from a 2-year college to a 4-year college and help them be successful? How do we get more students in that are from disadvantaged groups?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And instead of just talking about, well, we know there's issues there, how do we solve those issues? So I have a National Science Foundation grant as well with Rutgers University.
Wow.
And these grants are not through Holy Cross yet, but that's part of what I hope to bring here, because there's not a foundation that in research at this college. It started as a 2-year college, right?
That's right.
Changed to a 4-year college about 12 years ago. And so they're trying to move into that, not become a research college, but make research a part of the philosophy of teaching.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what it should
transition.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've been doing that really well at a community college, doing these crazy things you wouldn't expect a community college to be doing. So now I've kind of hit the barrier. I've got some really interesting things that were happening there. I want students to go into that junior and senior year and have that opportunity to go deeper into why should they go into AI? How should they use it? We have these fantastic tools that are what I call 5th generation languages. Are you all familiar with that concept?
Ooh.
Dimly.
Huh.
So first generation, I mean, does that go all the way back to basically binary and what you'd be coding ENIAC with? Or is that a little bit later?
Yeah, no, so 1st and 2nd generation languages really weren't defined until we had 3rd generation languages, which we talked about with like Java, Python, C++,
Okay.
Basic, Visual Basic,
So
those kind of things.
assembler is 1st or 2nd?
Yeah. So 1st and 2nd. So 1st is really talking at that the hardware level. How do we make that work?
Yeah.
With assembler. Then we have 2nd and 1st. I don't really deal with that much, but 3rd is where most people really, because I talk about it and nobody's really going to know what I'm talking about there, right? So
right.
the third generation languages
stuff.
Yeah, right. And so ultimately it's got to get to zeros and ones in that computer, right? Until we get to quantum computing, then it changes again.
Right.
That's right.
And we don't know whether it's a 0 or a 1.
Yeah.
Somewhere in between. But it's still 0 or 1-ish, right?
Well, it could be 0 and 1 at the same time. It's not in between.
Right. Yeah.
It's actually 0 and 1.
But we're still dealing with those dad-name bits, which is still a little low level for people.
Right. Yeah. And it doesn't get any easier than adding it, and multiplying zeros and ones, right? So I just finished teaching the first part of a discrete logic course, which is like discrete math combined with digital logic, and putting those concepts together with philosophy. When you have a philosophical statement, if something leads to something else, how do we talk about with modus ponens and modus tollens and these different ideas that are taught about in philosophy, but they're not often done in a way that you can actually test it. So 5th generation tools like Flogorithm and Raptor was written by the U.S. Air Force Academy. Flogorithm was written by a community college professor that allows students to create a flow chart, their logic, and it writes the code for them.
Interesting.
Right. So that's kind of the goal of 5th generation languages. 4th generation is like SQL, JavaScript, these things that have a very specific purpose, or report writer, those languages that aren't really generalized. But
MATLAB, maybe.
What's that?
MATLAB, maybe.
MATLAB can be, right? It can be used for lots of things. MATLAB is based on C++. That's actually what I did a lot of all my work actually in functional brain imaging was in MATLAB, because I could do matrices-based math. So from the extent that it has that expertise that you can do things with matrices, it really does give you that flavor. So I think it was intended as to be more of a specified language, but it became rather broad and used a lot in engineering. So I teach in our intro to computer science, it's half Python and half MATLAB, because Python, I also consider that to be kind of like a 4th generation language.
Sure. Python is a dream to code in. I learned some C++ as an undergraduate, and then I learned some Python just last year, in the last couple of years. Oh my gosh, Python is a dream to code in.
It is much easier as long as you can deal with the white space stuff. But that's actually, if you're an English person, like if you're an English major or professor, right, it's actually much easier to read that structure
than the
in
C++
Python than it is,
brace.
C++, right? Yeah.
I hate the actual like convention that people use to write the way they open the brace on the end of a line, and then it just makes no sense to me anyway. So
yeah, because there are different conventions for that in C++. It can be very difficult, and that's also what turns a lot of people off to computer science. Is you're writing in this other language that can be interpreted in different ways by people versus the interpreter of the computer, right? But people can interpret it, and it can be difficult to understand. So there are still some things about C++ that we can't get away from. It allows us to be more abstract and write code faster than other programs, generally speaking. Yeah. But it's harder and longer to write in that language.
But it runs so fast. Yeah, you can't get away from it.
It's like comparing Latin to English, right? Mm-hmm. There's all these different words for love in Latin. Right? And in English, love gets confusing, which leads to a lot of problems in our society. If people focus more on the Latin terms, that's what I've tried with my teenage kids. We'll see how that works. Right?
Yeah.
If you just knew the difference between ammo and diligo, we wouldn't have so many problems. Yeah, that's true.
And if we had a word more commonly used, a word like agape, we would maybe be able to focus on it a little bit more and treat it as something to develop in our culture.
Right. As well as fraternity and fidelity. What do those mean? Right.
Indeed.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed.